Good morning, guys. All right, today we are going to be reading a nonfiction book about Arctic hares. So remember, when we read it, you're going to see what a hare is. Some of you guys might already know. A hare is another word for a rabbit. So sometimes they're called hares. And while we're reading this book, since it's a nonfiction book, we're going to be looking for really interesting information. So it's not going to have a story. It's not going to have really characters because it's not a fiction book. It's just going to give us some facts. Now, I want you to be listening very carefully because at the end, we're going to do something we haven't done before. We're going to be getting to compare and contrast Arctic foxes to Arctic hares. So yesterday we read that book about an Arctic fox, and so we're going to be trying to think of things that are the same about an Arctic fox, the Arctic hare, and things that are different. And we're going to get to use something new that's called a Venn diagram, but we're going to start that together at the end of the story. All right. So right off the bat, we see our nonfiction text feature of a table of contents. And remember, a table of contents helps us find information in a book. So if I want to know how a Arctic hare finds food, but I don't have time to read the whole book, or I've already read the book and I just need to go back and remind myself, I can look on the table of contents and know I can talk about finding food on page 18. So I don't have to read through all the other pages. I can skip to page 18 to find that information. All right, so let's learn about Arctic hares. Life in the Arctic. Arctic hares live on Arctic mountains, rocky plateaus, and treeless coastlines. Their long, thick fur keeps them warm in this cold biome. And we talked about what a biome was yesterday. A biome is the place, the animals, and the weather that makes up a place. So just like yesterday, if you look down at the bottom, this book has another feature that you're going to find in nonfiction books. It has a map, and it's showing us in the yellow is where you can find the Arctic hares all around here. Arctic hares have gray and brown summer fur. Oh, what other animal had that? The Arctic fox did too, didn't it? It matches the color of the land. Their fur turns white each winter. It looks like the snow. So they're using that animal adaptation of camouflage and trying to blend in to their surroundings right there. Oh, this is another feature that you can see in nonfiction books, and we call this labeling. Labeling is when you point to something and name it. So it says black-tipped ears. So Arctic hares have these black-tipped ears, and over here it's pointing at eyelashes. It's showing you their eyelashes. It says Arctic hares have black-tipped ears that take in heat from the sun. So that black color on their ears helps get as much heat as they can from the sun. So that's an adaptation that they have too that helps them survive because it helps keep them warm. Black eyelashes act like sunglasses. The eyelashes guard their eyes from the snow's glare. So that's another adaptation that the Arctic hare has to help it live, is that it almost has sunglasses in its big eyelashes to help keep the glare off the snow. Arctic hares are fast. Their powerful back legs help them escape from predators. So they use those back legs to get away quickly. Their large feet help them from sinking in the snow. So this is different than a lot of other rabbits. If you look at their feet are actually wider and bigger, and that helps them kind of act like they have little sleds on their feet that keep them from falling all the way into the snow. Arctic hares have thick fur on their paws that helps keep them warm. So over here, it's showing you some special adaptations. And we've already talked about a couple of them. Those black-tipped ears are an adaptation. Sharp claws are an adaptation that helps them from keeping them from slipping on ice and snow. Those large fur-covered feet help them from slipping on the ice and snow too. Power in numbers. To keep warm, Arctic hares sit on their legs and flatten their ears. When it is very cold, they group together for body warmth. So you can see they get down all together and kind of cuddle up to keep themselves warm. And these are an Arctic hare stat. It's showing you a graph right here. And just like the Arctic fox, they're on the least concern. So they're not as endangered as other animals that live in the Arctic. And their lifespan, which means how long they live 3 to 5 years. Arctic hares sometimes feed in groups too. A predator arrives and they scatter. So they go out in different directions. The predator does not know which hare to chase. Finding food. In summer, Arctic hares eat berries, roots, buds, and leaves. In winter, they eat dwarf willow, mosses, and lichens. So let's think about this. The Arctic fox was an omnivore, which means that it eats meat and it eats plants. How about the rabbit? Is the rabbit an omnivore? No, the rabbit is a herbivore. It's just eating plants. Arctic hares have sharp claws that they use to dig for food. Adaptations like this make the Arctic. All right, and then here's our glossary of some of the words that you could look up if you did not know. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to flip over to Seesaw and show you how we're going to work on a Venn diagram together. We're actually going to start the diagram, and then you guys are going to go in and finish it with other facts that you remembered from the difference between Arctic hares and Arctic foxes. All right, guys, so this is what is new today. This is called a Venn diagram. And what a Venn diagram does is it helps us organize our information by comparing and contrasting things. Now, when we compare something, we see what's the same about them. When we contrast, we see what's different. So this is like two big circles that go over one another. This circle would be for the Arctic hare. This circle is for the Arctic fox. And this spot in the middle are things that are about both of them, okay? So I'm going to show you, we're going to do a couple of these together, then your job is to at least fill in one thing in each spot afterwards, okay? So the things that are on the outside are things that are just about hares and just about foxes, okay? So we're going to try that. So let's think of some information. All right, so I learned that the Arctic hare just eats berries and plants. So I'm going to put plant eater, okay? And then I'm going to put it over under the Arctic hare side because he's a plant eater, because I know there's something different. So I know that the Arctic fox ate plants and animals. So I'm going to put eats plants and animals over here, because that's something different. And then I'm going to move it on the Arctic fox side, okay? Then I want to think of something that's the same. So what's something that's the same about them? They're white in the winter. Very good. So I'm going to say white fur in the winter. Now this is the same. So I'm going to put this in the middle because it's something that's for both of them. So I'm just going to move it right in this middle part, okay? All right, we're going to do one more on each side together, and then your job is going to be to finish up and think of one more thing to put in each spot too. So what's something that's different about an Arctic fox and an Arctic hare? You know what I remember? Arctic fox likes to be by themselves. So we're going to say lives by themselves. Remember, they like to hunt and be by themselves. I'm going to move that right over here under Arctic fox because it's what he likes to do. But we learned that an Arctic hare was different, didn't they? They likes to live together because remember, that's how they stay safe from predators since they don't hunt other animals. All right, and then what is something else that was the same about the Arctic hare and the Arctic fox? They both have thick fur, don't they? That thick fur to keep them warm. So thick fur. And so I'm going to move that thick fur right in the middle. All right. So if we look at our Venn diagram again, remember on Arctic hares, we have their plant eaters, and they like to live together. On Arctic foxes, we have they eat plants and animals, and they like to live by themselves. And then in the middle, we have that they both have white fur in the winter and they both have thick fur. So your job is you need to think about one thing that's different about the Arctic hare and the Arctic fox, and then one last thing that's the same, okay? And you're just going to type them into Seesaw, and then you will be all ready to submit your work, okay? All right, you guys did an awesome job. I'm so proud, and I'll see you next week.